Thank you for listening to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast, available on iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, and Stitcher. Also, please follow Matt's Movie Reviews on Facebook, YouTube, Parler, and Instagram. And of course, be sure to visit www.mattsmoviereviews.net for the latest reviews, top 10 lists, and more. Now, on to the show.
What was that? Nazis.
I don't care if it's Hitler's personal pleasure cruiser. This is the only ship that we've came across in the last...
Keep your voice down.
He's right, Captain. The Russians are done.
We got to get off this raft. Simple as that, Captain.
You know what I think is strange?
Come on, Captain. Hey, why was just thrown overboard?
Oh, enough.
Always this fighting and shouting. No one comes to see.
Hello and welcome to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast. I am your host, Matthew Pejkovic, and this is episode number 283. Out now on DVD and video on demand is Blood Vessel, an Australian-made horror thriller set in the high seas during World War II that pits a motley crew of shipwreck survivors against an ancient evil on an abandoned Nazi warship. Starring Nathan Phillips, Alyssa Sutherland, and Robert Taylor, Blood Vessel is a terrifying creature feature that boasts excellent practical effects and low-budget filmmaking ingenuity. And joining me now on the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is the director of Blood Vessel, Mr. Justin Dix. Justin, thank you very much for joining me on the podcast.
Not a problem. It's a pleasure to be chatting.
So, it's really interesting when I watched your movie. Everyone knows the story of Dracula, of course. There's a small segment in Bram Stoker's Dracula novel where Dracula takes a ship called the Demeter it's a Russian ship from Transylvania to Britain, but it's a very, very small thing, and even in film adaptations, people don't really dwell too long on it. So when I saw the synopsis for your film, I was like, this is a movie we haven't seen before, a film that kind of delves into what would happen if a person was on a ship like that and there was a creature like a vampire on there, what would transpire? Was that part of the Dracula novel something that really inspired you to write this script and make this movie?
It wasn't really the thing that inspired me to write the movie. I do know of that portion of the novel, and also I'm a bit of a fan of Nosferatu and also Shadow of the Vampire, where they utilise the vampire on a ship occasionally. But again, I haven't seen that as a full film, and obviously, under the inspiration probably comes more from have what you have available to you, and the ship presented a one location environment, and that's to be honest, that's where the crux of the actual idea came from. You work with what you have, and I had a special effects studio and had a ship next to my studio, so I thought, well, there we go. There's the premise of my movie.
The ship itself, the real ship, is the HMAS Castlemaine. So this was a ship that was built for the Australian Navy and actually saw action back in World War II in Australian, New Guinea and Timor waters. Now it's a museum ship, pretty much. So I'm curious, considering it's now a museum, what's the process like in trying to get a film made on there? Do you have to go through a special council? Is there a board or something? Do you have to present your idea to and try to get permission for that to be done?
Yeah, absolutely. There are all a bunch of retired Navy guys who actually maintain the ship and open it on the weekends for the museum. It's in pristine condition. They've been restoring it for the last 3 decades, and they have a couple of patrons and so forth. And really, but the only money they make is on the weekends as a museum, which doesn't bring in a lot. So I I'd already gone down there and talked to them a little bit about it. I wanted to make a film. And obviously our location fee was small, but still quite good for it could add a few new repairs that they needed. So, and also they felt that it also could possibly boost some tourism there and stuff like that. But I went through all the gruesome details of what I was going to do. I said to them it's not going to look like the museum it does right now because it was all pristine and everything. We grind up walls, but we placed everything back. When we grind up walls with blood or dress the whole thing or lit it to make it look like the way we did, we returned it to the same way we found it. In hindsight, I probably could have built a lot of those as sets, but at the same time, it doesn't give you the same sense of being on the ship and the gangways and the claustrophobia, and it did the restrictions actually, I've always said out of adversity comes creativity. So you have to kind of think a little outside the square when you're inside the box.
When it comes to filming in a ship like that, like anyone who's been on one of those kind of Navy ships like that are now a museum, you can, when you're in there, you kind of think to yourself, how the hell was this thing operational? Because it's so tight. You can usually only just go the one way. You can't go back and forth that easily. Getting a film crew on there and having a cast of characters and all the other things that come with that, logistically speaking, was it very difficult to do, to get all that done, especially in the tight confines? Or does having that kind of restrictions really help and bring up about the claustrophobia and such that the movie really infuses?
No, it certainly helps, but at the same time, it was unknown. Like, obviously, we went there on location scouting, and I'd written a script and kept going, visiting it, so forth, the ship, just to get a sense of the space. But it wasn't until you actually get a whole crew in there and the cast, and you realise, okay, this makes it a little bit trickier. Single-access ladders and up and down, and especially the boiler room was a tricky one. It was 3 levels down, and and as I said, single-access ladders to get up and down. So. Literally the day we shot in the boiler room, I just decided I'm just going to stay in the boiler room all day. There's no point even trying to get up to the top. There's just no point because you had your weight to turn and it slows things down, and we were lowering cameras back and forth. And so it did make the process a lot more difficult, but at the same time it made it also a lot more authentic. I mean, again, there's no way we could have built that engine room. And, all we had to do is change a couple of the pressure gauges and so forth to German, and then pretty much it looked very authentic, obviously with the lighting and a couple of steamers, like closed steamers, to act as steam everywhere, pumping out. It creates a fantastic atmosphere. I was literally just putting together all the Blu-ray footage, and we're doing like an hour-long production diary, which kind of gives you a scene comparison with a location scouting with the actors.
Mm-hmm.
It's chalk and cheese. You look at the footage of just like before the thing is lit and before it's dressed and all that sort of stuff. And it's just, I mean, we gained $1 million without spending $1 million just straight away by shooting on the ship. It makes it a huge difference. I do understand, though, what they mean by getting sea legs. We all kind of like being on the ship all day, you come off it and you just feel like you're wobbling.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it works so well in the movie as well because, like you said, you could have built a set and it could have worked, but having that actual ship there, getting access to something like that, I mean, it's just gold, isn't it? Yep.
It wasn't their thing, it wasn't their genre. I kept telling them about it. They were just shaking their heads about vampires, burning little girls and blah, blah, blah. But they were quite enthusiastic and let us do whatever we wanted to the place. And we also, we had to kind of own the ship for 5 weeks, but we still opened it on the weekend, so we blocked off our sets so people couldn't go down there. But at the same time, if we needed something, props or some set dressings, they had it all there. I mean, they had it all, period. So it was just, they were able to help us enormously with an enormous amount of, like, dressing that kitchen or, all the armaments in the armory room. It was just all already there. And the other thing, there was actually a tiny bit of trivia, which actually was funny enough. I was filming, and then suddenly my dad, who was in Tasmania, he's ex-Navy, I was putting on Facebook that I was filming on that ship, and he contacted me and told me that, so basically, I think it was in the 1960s, he did his naval seamanship on the HMAS Castlemaine.
Oh, really?
Kind of so ironic.
Wow, that's awesome.
I was now filming on there, doing a vampire movie. He just received his DVD. I sent one through in Tasmania.
Oh, wow. That would be really cool to see whether he can, like, pick, like watching the movie, whether he could pick whether he was in, like, these different areas in the ship when he was doing his time there. And that sounds awesome.
Yeah, no, it was fortuitous. It was just a bit of a little karma. I don't know. It felt interesting. It just sort of spread around the ship going, did your dad serve on this ship? I said, yeah, well, he did his seamanship on this ship. So it's quite funny.
They mentioned before the cast that you had in this film, in particular Nathan Phillips, Elisa Sutherland, Robert Taylor. These are actors that have really, like, gone to the States especially and really, like, made a name for themselves, especially, like, in TV productions. To have them come back to work on your film, your feature film, what was that experience like?
Oh, it's great. I mean, I've known Nathan for a while. We've worked together on a few things already. Basically, I worked with him first. I think it was on what was it called? Dying Breed.
Mm-hmm.
And, so we got along really well. We were in Tasmania shooting that and everything. I was doing all the effects for it, and then we worked on something else. But then we just got along really, really well, and then remained friends. And then also the last thing we did was Hunters. I was co-producer and also the sci-fi TV series. He was the lead. And we kept talking on that, because there was a long show, and we were talking on that about working together. And I said, well, I'm writing this thing. I think you'd be awesome. And he goes, yeah, let's do it. So he's always wanting to make films together, and he's dying to. Yeah, I'm dying to work with him again. I've got another thing I want him for. But that was easy as far as Nathan, and he's such a giving actor in a sense that he knows his stagecraft. He's very professional, very prepared. But at the same time, he also came on as one of the producers because he was just putting so much effort and so much into the project. If we needed something, he'd force it down. If we needed this, he'd do his best to find it. And Alicia, well, I was just a fan of hers, so I was just a complete fan. And when I found out she was from Queensland, but obviously living in LA at the time, I just got in touch with her, and she was my first choice. And we just got along like a house on fire. And she's remained friends with myself and everybody. She's just such a down to earth Aussie girl. She just had a ball, but she did it because she loved the role. She just loved it. And, we were talking about not being a typical damsel in distress and so forth. Rob Taylor was kind of a funny story, really, because we were actually shooting already. We were about a week into shooting, and we still hadn't found our Captain Malone. And there was a couple of really interesting suggestions going around for it, and we were kind of struggling to find the right person. And then, I don't know how or where, I think it might have been on Facebook or something, but I heard Rob was in Melbourne, because normally he's in LA, because I know Rob quite well, because I worked with him 20 years ago on a film called Storm Warning, and we just really get along, and he knows me and I know him, and then so I just basically rang him and I just said, hey, I'm doing this film, do you want to be in it? It's only going to be a few days. And he was like, hell yeah, send me a script. He only read the first 5 pages, so he didn't know there were vampires in the movie.
Is it true that there was a part in production where the cast are together? Like the movie starts, they're on this little dinghy, they're in the high seas, and this big kind of ship comes where the cast are together, and everyone's just one person mentions vampires, and Rob Taylor's like, vampires? What are you talking about, vampires?
Absolutely, that's true. Yeah. He didn't know it was a horror. He didn't know it was a horror movie. Spoiler alert. He doesn't survive. Spoiler alert. He's not in the movie that much. So, none of the supernatural stuff starts while he's there. So he didn't read past until he's gone. He only left when he only learnt his lines, and that's all he needs to know. He didn't care about what the movie was about. He just wanted to work on my movie and work together because we really like each other, and he was, he's got fantastic success in America with the Meg and Longmire and all that sort of stuff, and his star is absolutely rising. And I said, look, I'm doing this little movie. Yeah, I'll come do your movie, no problem. Yeah, that'd be awesome. And he just had a ball. He just I think he reveled in it. Was just like a really it was a personal sort of a smaller, intimate, independent group, and you get a lot of say, and just everybody's so much more relaxed.
Yeah.
And just and again, we only needed him for like about 4 or 5 days. I am spewing though. Like the very first time I shot with him, we're going to do a raft scene, and we decided through that whole movie, it was meant to be raining through the entire movie.
Yeah.
It kept changing because of different things. We had this rain machine thing, and so on the very first night it was freezing, and we're out in the ocean, and we started raining on them. So the whole opening of that movie was meant to be them waking up from rain, basically, and collecting rain and trying to drink it. And then the ship comes in. Well, we did film that night. We filmed the whole raining scene. We filmed that whole thing. And then it was freezing, couldn't hear anybody, torrential rain were pouring on them, and I just had to make the executive decision, which is very hard on an independent film. We're going to scrap this and redo it, because I'm not going to have them rain on them going down that side of the ship and be constantly rained on the whole time. I just thought it was going to be a nightmare. And, they were all very good sports, saying, let's do it. No. And, Rob was like, it's fucking freezing, but fuck it. Let's do it. But yeah, so we decided to change it. I think they're all really willing to go that extra yard for me, but at the same time I said, yeah, you say that now, but 3 or 4 days of this, you're going to want to fucking kill me. So I'm just like, I'm gonna basically cut this one, and we're going to redo it. So we actually redid it and shot it in a pool, a heated pool, and it was at night time when they closed, and it was fantastic. Everyone had a ball because it was obviously, the only thing is everyone was getting sleepy because it was heated and chlorine-y. So yeah.
When it comes to the switch that the film makes, where so like in Rob's case, he didn't know it was a vampire film, and some people might go into not knowing it as well. So it happens kind of like maybe 40, 45 minutes. And when it comes to making that decision, When do you decide as a filmmaker to make that switch? When do you, is that done in the script? Is it done in post? When does it feel right to finally say, okay, and now we're going to bring in the patriarch at this scene right now? How do you feel that out?
It was definitely in the script. It was that way. I mean, I'm not going to say it's not a. I mean, I'm inspired by movies of the '80s. Obviously, the '80s were the best years of my movie life. They were just like everything, and and obviously the Alien, the first one came out in the '70s, but again, I got to see that in the '80s. But Alien was one of my really big inspirations because you don't see the alien 45 minutes in, so it was kind of more. You really get to know those characters. You can you talk about Alien with anybody, and all of those characters are really individual and really recognisable, and also quite distinct. And that's what I wanted with Blood Vessel. I wanted you to have care. I wanted you to care before the carnage. So I interlaced it with supernatural elements throughout. Obviously there was a bit of this and a bit of that as far as some spooky veins and books and things like that, and you sort of like start to create a bit of a mystery box. But as far as the when to go with it, I don't know. It just sort of felt natural at the point. It just sort of felt natural to sort of bring it in. I just didn't want to. There's always the temptation to just sort of like go straight away into some massive supernatural elements to it, but at the same time, then you'll basically, people would probably then complain that the characters were paper thin and they didn't know who the hell was who. So it was my choice to very deliberately go to build up the characters and get to know them first, and then we'll bring in the vampire.
Yeah.
Because again, I just like, and it's also the films that I love. The films that I love is Alien and things that sort of like give you a bit more of insight into the people. And again, if you're going to kill people, you want to care first. If you don't care, well, then what's the point?
Yeah. I think one of my favourite parts of the movie, going back to Nathan Phillips, I mean, for people who don't know, it is Australian actors in the film, but it's a mix of nationalities in the characters. It's a mix of kind of like different allied people. There's a Russian, there's a Brit, there's an Aussie, there's a couple of Americans. Nathan Phillips plays the Australian character. I think my favourite part of the film was when he first sees the patriarch, and there's a pause, and then you just hear get fucked. Like that. I mean, that's like fantastic. That thing, is that line right there, in the script, improvised, because it's just delivered so well.
Oh, totally in the script. No, it's basically, again, I'm inspired by movies of the '80s and things that I grew up with, and that was my version of Kurt Russell's "You've got to be fucking kidding me." From the thing. It's exactly that. It's like literally the exact same thing. And me and Nathan talked about it. I said, "That's that Kurt." I said, I actually said to him in this movie. Me and Nathan talked about it a lot. And I said, go watch it if you want again, Nate, but I know you already knew the movie well. But I said, you are Kurt Russell from The Thing in this movie. You are sort of the, that's what I want you to be, and, you don't trust Niles, I think it was David Keith, or Keith David. Sorry, I always get those actors mixed up. Anyway, but it's basically who played the African American character, and they just don't trust each other. By the end, they're pals, and that's what I said. That was the relationship as well with him and Teplov, the Russian. I said I want it to be antagonistic, and you don't trust each other, but then by the end of it, you're best buds. It was kind of like, it was very deliberate. Almost everything in the script is deliberate. There's no ad-libbing. It was all kind of pretty much stuck to script. I mean, we cut stuff out. There was actually more antagonistic stuff between the Russian and the Australian, and but at the same time, we didn't want to beat it over the head, I guess. And as I said, for that particular moment, also is one of my favourite, because it's so typically Australian.
Yes.
But also, it's perfect. Like, what else would you say?
Exactly. I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, as an Aussie, you're watching the film, and you're like, I would say the exact same thing if I was in his position right there. It's such a well played out scene. The vampires themselves, the design and the look of them. I mean, there's been different interpretations over the many decades since the time of Nosferatu of what vampires would look like from the those early Nosferatus to the glittery teen vampires of Twilight. And what you had here, especially in the design of the Patriarch, is something different. You see influences here and there of little things, but it's completely your own design. From conception to completion, how long does that take to bring to life for the screen?
Well, I knew very early what I wanted, and it's come up pretty damn close to what I wanted. I want to say, sorry, pretty close. It's come up exactly the way I wanted. But what I'm saying is from the initial idea, it actually hasn't changed that much. It went through about 5 different designs, all would look the same, just with big ears or this or bigger chin, and we actually changed the sculpt. I had quite a lot. But we start with a little maquette, like a little statue. So I've still got that statue here. We've made molds of it so we can give it to investors and so forth. But so essentially we start with a maquette to kind of get the initial feel and look. I just knew that I wanted exactly what you were saying. I didn't want... If I'm going to do a vampire movie, I'm going to do a non-teenaged angst movie.
Yeah.
or to be honest, just put some sort of like sharp teeth on somebody. I just don't, it's just not my thing. And obviously I'm in a privileged position of having done special effects for the last 20 years and also having special effects studios. So obviously I'm just going through a creature feature, I want to go through all the creatures. I mean, I grew up again with all these sort of movies that I love. So, my first movie, Crawl Space, I put in some whatever, alien, zombies, and mutated gorilla and stuff. This one, if I'm going to do a vampire movie, I'm going to do a vampire movie. And I'm going to do vampire movies that I love to see. So I wasn't trying to please anybody other than myself, as in, if anybody else loves them, they love them, which is great. But again, I'm just a big fan of particular makeups from different movies. Like my favourite is Tim Curry in Legend of the Darkness. A lot of people don't know what I'm talking about, but it's a big red demon guy with massive horns. It was just the most beautiful makeup, and I kind of wanted my version of Darkness, which is a very theatrical kind of looking makeup with, instead of horns, big ears, and he's a bat, and I didn't want to shy away from any of that. But at the same time, I just wanted to feel classic, feel Nosferatu, but my own version of Nosferatu. And I'm a massive fan of things like what they did in Bram Stoker's Dracula as well. I mean, it's kind of like, again, it's tricky when you're trying to create some of your own little legends, or not legends, your own little take on vampire the mythology and things like that. So obviously, we did this thing with these veins and being able to control sort of people's actions and talk through them and so forth, because I wanted to just create something a little bit different from my own perspective. But even the crew at the end that they find, spoiler alert again, but anyway, they find some infected vampiric German. Mm-hmm. So we started calling, and I was saying to them, I said, I want them to be a cross between a zombie and a vampire. Let's just call them zombies. So I think that's a new term. We got zombies in there.
Well, it's really cool that you could add to the very rich kind of history of vampire lore. I wanted to just switch gears a little bit and just talk about being a filmmaker during the time of COVID. Like right now, we're kind of in a privileged position in Australia where a lot of parts of the states people can work, some people can go to cities. You're in Melbourne though, which is part of a really stage 4 lockdowns, and you own your own studio down there. You have Wicked of Oz. You guys do prosthetic makeup effects, props, miniatures, etc. for different types of movies. How has this affected what you guys are doing now with Wicked of Oz? I mean, is the work you're doing considered essential enough that you can work? Are you working in other parts of the country or other parts of the world? What's it like as a filmmaker and a film artist in this time of COVID?
Oh, it sucks. But at the same time, it sucks. But it's also, I'm looking at it, rather than being pessimistic about the whole thing, I'm looking at, to be honest, an opportunity and optimistic. It's normally as a special effects studio, our busy time is March to November. So obviously that's completely wiped out this year because last March to November we were doing all the effects, or not all, but we did a huge amount of creature work for Kung Fury, which is the feature film, and we made it all here in Melbourne, and then I took it over to Germany and Bulgaria, and we shot it over there. And that was, normally this is generally a busy time. But at the moment, we haven't been doing anything. But when I say I haven't done anything, we haven't been doing anything for anybody else. And also, I've been working on, when I was, before we went to lockdown in, March, I was working towards my next feature film, which was a big sprawling thing to be shot in Melbourne. But COVID basically, I have to admit, presented us with an opportunity to reimagine it. So we did. We've just completely reimagined it. And if I hadn't been forced into that COVID corner, I wouldn't have found the secret sauce that I probably should have been looking for all along. So we've decided instead of shoot, it's going to be my Batman. It's not Batman. It's called Riding Hood.
Yeah.
But it's a massive creature feature again. But it was going to be, I keep saying it's my Batman on a budget, but shooting it in Melbourne at night time with cars and blocking off traffic, and it was going to be super difficult, the most difficult thing I've ever done. So what I'm doing is now force us to reimagine. I have a big cyclorama here, so we're going to do, and we've already shot like a 3-minute test. We're just going to shoot the entire thing green screen with like Sin City and using Unreal Engine, which we've just done a 3-minute test. It looks great. So we've actually, it's in a way, it's kind of, I would have never gone down that avenue for if not for a pandemic. So now, even if we went back to normal today, I would still do it this way because it's so much more manageable. It keeps us. My 2 films have been. One was shot entirely in studio, and the other was shot pretty much entirely on a ship. So I'm going back to what I know, shooting straight back into a studio. But we're just going to be doing it with new tech, with Unreal Engine and all that sort of stuff. And as I said, we've done some tests. It works really well, and it actually, in a way, I'm going to get the vision that I actually have always envisioned for Riding Hood. Instead of trying to make Melbourne look like an alternate New York, we can create that just in the computer. And obviously I can also, under COVID conditions, that make it even better because I can shoot my car separately if I need be. Rather than having massive crowd scenes, I just shoot 5 people at a time and space them out. It's fine. It actually makes the whole thing a whole lot easier. Reduce crew as well. I'm stripping it out of all the location fees and the difficulties of shooting at night, and I can shoot it comfortably during the day. It's actually, and I'm using the rest of the time that I'm not working on that at the moment just to completely, I'm rewriting scripts and creating a TV series, which we're also planning on doing next year. So yeah, there's a lot. There's actually, well, I haven't complained too much, and I'm definitely not going to complain about it because it's actually given me a lot of creative time to work on my own projects, whereas we might have been doing special effects for other people's projects, which then mine suffer.
Yeah. Well, they do say that.
That answers it.
Well, they do say that necessity is the mother of invention, and I imagine that, like yourself, there'll be a lot of people around the world affected by this thing that are looking internally and working on their own stuff and perfecting their craft. And having said that, though, do you have a feeling that a lot of people are out there just chopping at the bit, ready to get back to work and ready to create?
Oh, 100%. They are, totally. Everybody I know are. Everybody. Anyone in the film industry or creative industry are. They really are. I mean, and the thing is, but I think we have to be realistic. We're not going to, when we come out the other side of this even next year, and let's just say we all go down to stage 1 or whatever. I mean, until there's a proper vaccine and all that sort of stuff, there's going to be new restrictions in place for quite a while, and it's probably going to reinvent the industry. So that's why we're trying to reinvent ourselves now. We're trying to reinvent a projects the way we do them now. You might as well because. I find myself also writing a couple of scripts that are very isolation orientated, like with 2 casts, so 1 robot and 1 human. So just to keep it all very simple, because, what's the point of writing something you possibly won't be able to shoot? We just don't know. So it's like when, there's a lot of businesses out there that aren't film related that are having to reinvent themselves, maybe sort of like they're adjusting their business to be more online or whatever. But it's the same with the film industry. If we can kind of just wish for this all to be over and go back to normal, but I don't think, I do feel it's going to be not going to be as quick as everybody thinks. I think it's going to be a couple of years before everything gets back to any sort of semblance of normal. So, I sort of feel if you've got to just adjust and roll with the punches. So, it is, as I said, the situation has presented myself with new outlook and opportunities or sort of ways of looking at things and going, well, actually, that's a better way, the way I was going to do it. It takes a bit of the pressure off in some ways.
Well, fortunately, you have a movie out there in Blood Vessel for everyone out there dealing with this lockdown stuff. They can watch it. I really enjoy your movie, Justin. I really do. I'm a big vampire film fan, and this is one of my favourite ones I've watched in recent years. So for everyone out there, you can buy Blood Vessel now on DVD through Umbrella Entertainment. Also available on video on demand through iTunes, Google, Fetch, and also Foxtel. And Justin Dix, congratulations with Blood Vessel, and thank you very much for your time today.